Is it easy to get fired in the pharmaceutical industry? The answer actually might surprise you. So in the pharmaceutical industry, like any other type of industry, a lot of people get terminated, a lot of people resign, just like any other type of industry. However, the pharmaceutical industry is actually a little bit more unique because some of the pitfalls that you might have as a team member are a little bit different. Let me explain. So, when it comes to being hired in the pharmaceutical industry, and a lot of these big pharmaceutical companies, there's probably four main reasons that you may get fired that are a little unique than other types of companies. The first one being if you violated any type of compliance rules and regulations, especially if you're out there educating healthcare providers. So, for example, if you're a pharmaceutical sales rep and you violate some type of compliance rules that have been set by the pharmaceutical industry itself in terms of like violating the Pharma code. So the Pharma code is the pharmaceutical industry's rules on engaging with healthcare providers that's set forth by Pharma. Pharma is the industry trade organization for the pharmaceutical industry. So they set rules in terms of how you as a pharmaceutical rep should be engaging and interacting with healthcare providers. The same holds true for example, medical science liaisons who also engage with healthcare providers, or field reimbursement specialists who also engage with healthcare providers. Now, one of the biggest things that is a big no-no when it comes to engaging with healthcare providers is speaking about something off-label. Off-label. Now, when we say label, we are really talking about the package insert. So, when you go to the pharmacy and you get your medication, you'll notice with that medication, they always have a little leaflet, right? It's folded up white leaflet. Sometimes it's attached to the medication. Sometimes it's loose on its own in the bag where you get the medicine. That's called the package insert or the label. Anything that is not in the label that you talk about, anything that you mention that the drug can do that's not indicated by the Food and Drug Administration, if you're in the US, that is considered off-label. So for example, if you're a pharmaceutical sales rep and you have a product, let's say that's indicated for type 2 diabetes, and you say that it can also help improve obesity, and that's not part of the indication in the package insert, well, then that claim that it can actually improve obesity would be considered an off-label claim. And that's a big no-no in the pharma industry. And pharmaceutical reps are not allowed to speak off-label. Actually, no one in a pharmaceutical company is allowed to speak off-label, even if you work in an area called medical affairs. You probably heard me talk in other videos about medical affairs and medical science liaisons. I'll drop a link in the video below to some of those other videos that you can check out about what medical affairs professionals and what medical science liaison professionals do. But even in that case, medical science liaisons who are there to educate, not sell to physicians, they can only speak off-label if it is an unsolicited request for information. So for example, if you're a medical science liaison and you are working on a drug that's indicated for type 2 diabetes, and you go to the physician and the physician says, hey, I also saw some data at a recent obesity conference that your drug can help improve people that have diabetes, right? That have obesity, rather, right? We can help improve their weight if they have obesity. Is that true? Now, by the physician asking that question, is that true? That's an unsolicited request for more information. Now, you as the medical science liaison can answer that question, and you wouldn't be violating any of the compliance rules or regulations. However, if you proactively bring up that data from that conference without being asked, that would be considered a violation of the off-label rules. Another big one is providing inaccurate information. Now, whether you do this willingly or you do it unknowingly, providing inaccurate information to a healthcare provider can have deadly consequences, because remember that healthcare providers, much of the information that they get from the pharmaceutical sales reps, from medical science liaisons, helps to inform their clinical decision making. So if you go to a physician and say, yeah, you can use this medication first line for treatment in patients with type 2 diabetes, but actually it's a second line treatment, that could be a problem, right? That can be a problem. So providing inaccurate information to healthcare providers is really an issue, which is why I'm really a big proponent of making sure that people that are out there educating healthcare providers have standards in place in terms of assessing their competency. And I'm a big believer, as you guys know, in certifying and accrediting people that work in the pharmaceutical industry, no different than what we do in other industries, like in medicine, law, accounting, so forth and so on. The second big reason people get fired is related to the violation of ethical standards. So the first one is related to compliance rules and regulations set forth, like I said, by Pharma, the trade organization. But the second one is a little bit more serious. So as with the first one, you can get fired from your job, but you may not face any jail time. Whereas with the second one, you can actually face jail time. You can actually face penalties that are serious and severe, financial, criminal, and otherwise. One of the big ones is violating some type of HIPAA policies. Now, if you don't know what HIPAA is basically a framework that's been implemented in the United States for the last probably 30 years or so to protect patient privacy. Now, if you're listening to this and you're a patient, I'm sure you've experienced this where you go to the doctor's office and you have to sign off on certain things related to your privacy as a patient. Well, if you're working for a pharmaceutical company and you're at a doctor's office and you somehow either come in contact with personal patient information, individuals' patient information and their records, their medical records, and you share that information or you use that information in speaking with the doctor, that's a violation of HIPAA, and that can put you in a lot of hot water. Of course, being terminated is be one of them. Another thing is related to the violation of anti-kickback laws. Now, this is related to, let's say, a pharmaceutical sales rep goes into a doctor's office and says, "Look, doc, I'm low on my prescriptions this month. Can you please, do your best to increase the prescriptions? If you can do that for me, I'm going to make sure that, we take care of you." And you give them money or something of value, some item of value. Now, Pharma Code sets in place a limit as to what a pharmaceutical company can provide in terms of value to a doctor if it's not educational in nature. So, this doesn't happen as much today, I think, because of the increased awareness around the severe consequences of anti-kickback laws, but it can happen. Of course, another one is somehow violating, Medicare rules and regulations or Medicaid rules and regulations, basically insurance fraud, whether it's private or federal government. Most of the time it's Medicare fraud. Medicare, remember, is the part of the federal healthcare insurance system that deals with elderly patients, right? And so a lot of times people try to do things that are violating Medicare's rules and regulations and try to increase, for example, the reimbursement from Medicare. That would be a major issue that can throw you in jail. And I've talked about that in other videos where there's physicians, for example, that have tried to make money during the opioid crisis, where they were basically perpetrating fraud on the American people related to opioids. Another reason why people get fired, a little bit kind of a different reason now, is related to M&A. M&A is mergers and acquisitions. So oftentimes, like happens in many different companies, what happens is that you have situations where large companies will acquire a smaller company, or two mid-sized companies, for example, will merge. In these types of situations, there's redundancy. And this increased redundancy of roles creates a situation where these individuals then are no longer needed, and then oftentimes they get laid off. Now, the good news is in the pharmaceutical industry, when you get laid off, by and large, especially if it's due to a merger or an acquisition, you do get a pretty good severance package. I just know someone recently who was laid off from a pharmaceutical company, and he received a 6-month severance package. If you're there for longer, you might even be able to receive, let's say, a severance package for up to 1 year. So they are pretty good with that. The negative is oftentimes you won't have any notice. So I've heard, many stories where people, wake up that morning, they're asked to go on a conference call, and then that afternoon, everybody is told on the conference call, it could be like 100 people on the call, and they're told, hey, we're sorry to tell you your position has been eliminated. And that's really how quickly it happens. Usually when you get eliminated from a pharmaceutical company, too, there's no 2 weeks. Once you're let go immediately, and usually by the end of the day, you have to turn in all your company equipment, etc. Because remember that when you work for a pharmaceutical company, you're dealing with a lot of sensitive information, and so they don't really want people that are no longer with the company or not going to be with the company anymore to have access to that information. So M&A is another one. The last reason would be not getting a drug approval. So what pharmaceutical companies have to do, remember, and I've talked about this in other videos, they have to put together a lot of information and data and submit it to the FDA to get their drug approved. Okay? And oftentimes they assume they're going to get the drug approved. They feel good about it. So what they start to do is they start to hire lots of people. And then what happens is, bam, they find out from the FDA that, sorry, your drug didn't get approved. And now that your drug's not approved, now it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Because I've hired medical liaisons, I've hired pharmaceutical rep, but now I can't actually market the product because guess what? The drug didn't get approved. And that oftentimes leads to a situation where you have to let people go that you just hired. So you'll hear that happen in the pharma industry where someone's hired, they're there for 3 months, and then they're let go. So that's another potential situation. And then the one last reason that I will mention that happens sometimes as well is when there's changes to access for your drug where your drug really isn't going to be used anymore and generics might be used. And I've seen that happen with certain drugs, especially in the hospital use where, for example, someone has a new delivery method for a product. Let's say it's an IV delivery method. And then what happens is, the hospital says, wait, we shouldn't put this drug on our formulary and use it in the hospital here. We'll just use a generic, because the generic is much cheaper and it lowers the overall cost for the hospital or the healthcare system. And then that may create access barrier to your product, which is one of the reasons why I think that field reimbursement and market access has become such an important function for pharmaceutical companies, because in reality, they play a really critical role in streamlining market access and patient access to important drugs. And this is one of the reasons why I think the program that our company offers, the ACMA, the Prior Authorization Certified Specialist Program, has become so popular. It's the #1 program for field reimbursement specialists, for prior authorization specialists, because it does such a great job of teaching people how to streamline market access, patient access issues, minimize prior auth denials. Those are the main reasons why people get fired in the industry. Like I said, it's difficult to get fired unless you do something really egregious. By and large, pharmaceutical companies want to retain the people. They invest a lot in training, and they're actually known for doing a 1 or 2 month type of training with new hires and really making sure that they're effective when they go out there and speak to physicians. All right, if you like this content, be sure to subscribe if you haven't, drop us a like, and be sure to comment below. Let us know what other types of content you're interested in hearing about. I'll talk to you guys soon.